Well, you turned up at the right time, Davy. Turns out I got rather bored waiting, because I had nothing to do this evening, oddly enough. So yeah, I'm starting this early. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the, this ongoing thing of me responding to Prime Minister's questions. Hello, Miss Steam. The basic format of this is simply that I'm going to address the 6 questions from the Leader of the Opposition and then the 2 questions from the second largest opposition party. As you noticed, the theme of this week is a little different. And if I could, I would actually play a video, but needless to say, when I think of Jeremy Corbyn, and you might be able to hear this, I'm not sure. This is what I hear when I hear any policy come out of Jeremy Corbyn's mouth. Not even a joke, that's what I think. I think of the $1 Million Man. I hope you heard that. If you didn't, I apologise. And I would have played the video, but it's not really a video. It's WWF from like the 1990s. Yeah, the videos weren't. Yeah. Anyway, this week's theme has, as you may have noticed on the thumbnail, is entirely money based, which is a nice change, to be honest. There have been a number of things going on in politics recently, and I was somewhat surprised that yet again things aren't being spoken of that could be spoken of, like Telford. Still nothing. Basically, the government's position is, and I'm still working on a video for it. The Home Office have issued a statement saying it's now down to the is it IICSA, I think, and they deal with child sex offences, I believe. In any case, it's a fobbing off to another department, and it's boring as hell. Socky. Okay, so you're here, so I can actually I'll do this now. Yesterday, when I was streaming with Roaming Millennial, I got a super chat, but I also got a Streamlabs donation, I believe, from Socky. Well, no, I don't know if both were. I know the Streamlabs was. And you asked me if I would stick a bone or a tentacle in Roaming Millennial. So here's my response to that. And I apologise for not answering this sooner. I respect Whammon. Especially as Whammon has agreed to make me a sandwich. It's on Twitter. I might see if I can pull the image up, because I print screened it. Come on, OneDrive, open up. Oh, you're being special. There we go. Right, okay, so I can do this. Because I was worried she might delete it, but she hasn't. So let's see, where is it? Oh, the tweet that she retweeted, I'm going to read this, from Spectacular Wanderer. And the award for best live stream trolling of the day, Little Miss Anonymous just got Omegon to ask Roaming Millennial why she hasn't made him a sandwich yet. Little Miss Anonymous and I talk a lot on Skype, and yeah, that was amusing. The fact that she actually oh, I still can't believe she did that. Let's see. Lots of tabs open on Telford. Okay, I can share that image. I will just add an image. Give me a sec. Image. Doesn't matter. Browse. Where's my desktop? Yes, I'm gonna. I might just stick it when she does. I'm gonna take the clip of me asking. Yeah. So. Oh yeah. This nigga's gonna get a sandwich. Unbelievable. Ignore the response. That's just poor taste. Yes. Me respect Whammon. So me not, not going to do that. Right. Oh, I didn't see the chat then. I will, give me a sec. Has Omegon made no overtures, Miss Steamed? Disgusting. I made you plenty of sandwiches. You did, and I'm not taking that away from you. Fuck you, Socky. However, Roaming Millennial is a huge channel. Getting someone like her with such a big channel to serve me, a lowly peon, is just amazing. Anyway, totally off topic now, and I want to get back on to Prime Minister's questions. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to... I am not going to be putting up the Hansard like I usually do. I'm going to put the video up, but I'll need your help a little because I want to know if my audio and the video's audio are good enough. So I'm going to play the very first bit, which we don't have to cover, and we will certainly cover certain virtue signalling soon enough. Right. So, yes. And no, we're not playing all 45 minutes of it, dear God. So, if I just get my because I can't see OBS, I'll have to get something else. And yes, I don't mean I'm relying on the tablet. So I will quickly. How am I not signed in? Fuck off. There we go. I will read the chat in a moment. I do apologise for not. I'm pretty useless though, let's face it. Right, yes, so if you can hear this and it's okay levels, I will turn up a little bit.
Order. Questions to the Prime Minister. Mr. George Howarth.
Just as a thing, I don't mind the jeering, cheering, whatever you want to call it. But it's annoying, actually. I take everything back I said before. I said it's annoying. Before then, because it is actually annoying. I find it rather irritating. So yeah, if it's loud enough when she speaks, I'll just skip ahead a little bit.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow marks the one-year anniversary of the Westminster terrorist attack. It was a sick and depraved attack on the streets of our capital.
Can you mock the PM? Yes. If this is loud enough for you, can you press 1 in the chat for me? Like if my audio and that audio isn't too bad, because I had this issue with Roaming Millennial yesterday where she used a clip-on microphone instead of her Yeti, and that's not a dig at her or anything. She went to a lot of effort to actually look amazing, and then I used a cartoon image when I could have just used. I could have used Discord and copied, cut her camera and put it behind it. Fantastic, right. For those who don't know, there was a terrorist attack last year in Westminster that they're now addressing, which they're all going to address. Some people got hurt because some dickheads got a bit cocky. Yes, those dickheads are dead now.
But what I remember most is the...
Actually, you know what? I don't want to hear this part, so I'm going to skip to Corbyn. Where is it? Okay, so ignore this. Normally the first question is from opposition. And it's usually a question that will challenge the Prime Minister. Actually, I don't mind it so much, but I wasn't able to research this one because I didn't have time. I was too busy, playing video games. And I don't know, twiddling my thumbs. Oh, I'm painting a Stormcast Eternal. Was it Elemental? Eternal? Yeah, Eternal. In any case, the second question is usually one of those planted ones to make the Conservatives look good. So we're now going to get to Corbyn. And I just want to say, I'm going to play his entire bit because it actually annoys me how long it takes to get to the question. So I'm not sorry remotely. I had to change the live chat on here as well. Just this as an interesting little side note here. And why Theresa May is still Prime Minister? Because I have no idea. I don't actually know why. But she is. And I'll be honest, she doesn't put on the worst possible performance this time, so it's not too bad. Hang on a sec. Why is OBS not showing? Oh, I know why, because, yeah, there we go. Yeah, yeah, it's not too bad, actually. Yeah, exactly, Prospero. Absolutely. I think... Okay, so yeah, Corbyn's going to dawdle, and it's going to take a while, and this annoys me greatly. In fact, Prime Minister's question is only meant to go for about 30 minutes. Notice it goes 45 minutes. I don't mind it going to 45 minutes, and there are some questions later on I would love to get to if we have time, but at the same time, for fuck's sake, stay on point. However, Corbyn, being the most virtuous of virtuous people, he'll dawdle and then he'll drag it on. Yeah, so I'm going to make you suffer what I have to suffer here.
Exceptional bravery of our...
10. Merseyside police have lost...
Where is it? There it is. Fuck it. 1 second. I want to make sure I get... Right, yeah. Yeah.
We too join the Prime Minister in commemorating the attacks that took place in Westminster a year ago, and I too will be at some of the events tomorrow. We should all remember.
Just before we continue with this, isn't it interesting that Jeremy Corbyn talks about diversity and inclusivity? He is a straight white man saying this. The deputy leader of the party sits on his right-hand side. Well, on our right, his left-hand side. He's also a straight white man. Nice, right? Real diversity at the top there.
This as an attack on democracy within our society. I also join the Prime Minister in sending condolences to the friends and family of the Red Arrows engineer who sadly died yesterday, and we wish the pilot well in his recovery. Mr. Speaker, I had the pleasure of meeting Andrea Zafariku, who's won this Global Teachers Award, just before she went off to receive it, and I think we should all congratulate her and Alperton School in Brent for the great work that she does there. And Mr. Speaker, today is the Kurdish New Year, Navroz. Can we wish all Kurdish people all around the world a happy, and particularly for those who are suffering so much in the conflict in Syria, a hope of peace in the year to come.
It took a minute. A whole fucking minute. And that's not even a joke. You go back a minute in this, he will start talking. Jesus Christ, man. How much do you want to appeal to people? Honestly, it's so frustrating. I know this is silly, but I know he wants to show... He lacks a lot of personality, so I don't understand why he wants to... you know what, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. It's just going to piss me off. Right, so his first question is going to be on a council. And yes, if you, as earlier stated with the thumbnail, it's about... And I wished I could have found an image of the polymer pound notes. I could have stuck behind the picture of Corbyn that I cropped. But our polymer notes haven't quite been stacked up yet and taken as a picture, because they're just not as good to look at as dollar bills. I'm so intersectional, indeed.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister believe the collapse of Northamptonshire Council is the result of Conservative incompetence at a local level, or is it Conservative incompetence at a national level?
Right, so this one's going to be interesting, because I didn't know anything about this until I saw that. So I'm going to go through a few bullet points that I've linked in the description. Because honestly, I didn't even know Northamptonshire was a council. I mean, honestly, anything... Obviously, it must be north, I assume. For all I know, it could actually be the south. I just don't care. Okay, so in September 2017, the council launches an appeal for fairer funding from central government, as a local government association peer review group says it is running out of time. In October of 2017... Damon Lawrenson replaces Paul Blanton as chief executive. On November 2017, council staff are told they must take a day's unpaid leave. January, Secretary of State for Local Government Saeed Javid, let's go with foreign. Yes, let's call him foreign. Orders a probe into the council's finances. In 2nd of February, the council bans almost all new spending for 2017-2018. On February 20th, Auditor KPMG says the Council's 2018-2019 budget may be unlawful. And I could actually probably tell you why in a second, as soon as I pull up the thing. Law breach warning that it should not sign off its budget because it may be breaking the law due to severe financial challenges. I believe this is in reference to a budget cut. I believe it was... Oh, let's see. In notice... right. Okay. Overspend of 20... There was a... In the notice project, there was a projected 21.1 million overspend for 2017-18, partly caused by the failure to sell housing development land. So basically, they jumped the gun and assumed they'd make the money. They didn't make the money, so they fucked up. Right. On the 16th of March, Inspector Max Caller is due to outline his findings, so we're waiting. I'll wait for that. And on the 21st of March, the interim chief executive left his post. Now, let's see. Okay, Now, I don't know whether or not, and the Prime Minister's going to give her answer on this one. Until that report comes out, I can't speculate on whether or not the Prime Minister's about to tell the correct answer or not. Because based on what I've learnt, it seems like it's not so much about... it could be the cuts, but... okay. Thank you, Prospero. I didn't actually know that. United Kingdom's geography is a bit of a mystery to me. I've stayed on the eastern side of the country. I've only ever ventured to the, well, northwest-ish once. And that was in 2007, I think, to see My Chemical Romance at the Manchester MEN Arena, or, as most of my other friends call it, that massive gay arena in Manchester, called the Men Arena. Anyway, where it says here on 20th February, the Council agrees a revised budget involving nearly 40 million in cuts. Some people, and Corbyn is one of them, is pouncing on that. The assumption being that cut caused the problem. Just because less money is being put into something doesn't mean that it isn't working as well because of that lack of money. There are many other reasons. There was talk about the NHS as well, not in this, but earlier in the week. When I was watching, what's the dickhead's name? Jeremy Hunt? He was talking about the wages going up, which is great because, honestly, for what they do, they deserve it. But as far as I'm aware, there was a deal in place that meant that productivity, that the pay would go up, but there would also be productivity targets that had to be met, which I think is reasonable when you work in emergency services, but I also understand and think that the government has to accept that cannot always be met due to mitigating circumstances. For example, the fact that you cannot guess who's going in and who's going out. You cannot guess how many people are going to go in with a stroke. It's just not something you can predict. And based on the number of gunshot victims that are now coming up, because people seem to be getting guns, I'm not sure where from, you can't predict this is going to happen. Omegon has good taste. Thank you. So yes, let's go back to the Prime Minister. There might be more to this. Let me see. Oh, we'll get to that. Okay, there is more to it, but I'm going to get to that in a moment. So we'll get to the Prime Minister first. And while she doesn't take as long, she will also dawdle before getting to the answer. And I apologise, but I just can't be bothered to find the bit where she stops and actually answers the question. Also, what do you think of the atmosphere thing? All the jeering, the cheering. Do you think it's childish? I mean, I don't. I think it's interesting as something that's considered parliamentary instead of applauding, because that it's not really permitted generally to applaud. Applaud? Yes, in Parliament. So I'm curious to see what you all think.
Can I first join the Right Honourable Gentleman in wishing all those who are celebrating Nowruz a very happy Nowruz. And if we are looking at what is happening in relation to local councils, obviously there has been the report into Northamptonshire County Council, but let's just look at what we see across the board in councils. Let's just, yes. If you look at what is happening in councils up and down this country, there is one message for everybody, and that's that Conservative councils cost you less.
Okay, so this is a reference to a few things that are going to crop up later, but I'm going to mention them now. It is, there are suggestions of, and I believe, let's see, okay, so there's plans for things called land value tax. The idea of taxing those with bigger properties more because they have bigger properties. There are calls. Help Labour of all people is calling on the Scottish Government to introduce, and it's actually called this, a tourist tax. What the fuck is someone comes here on a holiday, and the first thing I'm thinking is, so we're going to slap them with a tax bill. Welcome to the United Kingdom. Pay that to our Majesty, please. Her coffers, anyway. It amuses me. Right, let's continue because okay, actually no, there is one little thing. You notice how she doesn't really answer his question, right? And that's because while she's making these claims that we are actually putting more money into the councils, it's not entirely true. It is subjective. It's dependent on which council. And as far as North Hampshire Council goes, because I want to stick on this for just a little longer, I personally, and I agree with many others who have said this, think that Northamptonshire Council should be dissolved and split into 2 separate councils. That has been suggested. I agree with it. Clearly, it's far too big for one council to operate with, and the council that has before has messed it up. They assumed too much, they guessed, and they screwed it. And I don't like this idea of people thinking, oh, I'll make my money back on this, so I'll just spend the money I'll make back later that I haven't made yet on something else which will then inevitably backfire on me. Apparently people don't have foresight or any kind of perception past their little bubble. And it is a good way to kill tourism, you are quite right. So let us continue.
Mr. Speaker, my question was actually quite specific to Northamptonshire. And
I tend to agree with him on this. It was quite specific, and she didn't actually answer him. He may be a bit of a cock, and she might be sucking his cock, and he might be licking his balls, but he did ask a very specific question. She didn't even answer to it, really. She then just deflected onto the grander picture, which is quite a terrible... I think anyone here, especially to the, 21, 22 people watching, I think we all are easily smart enough to know deflection is not an answer. But it's going to come up a few more times, don't worry. You'll get as frustrated as I did.
the Tory leader of the council said, we've been warning the government from about 2013-14 we couldn't cope with the level of cuts we were facing. And 3 years ago, Mr.
Which, when the idea is postulated that maybe it should be split into two councils, makes it seem like they might be able to manage the budget better if they're covering less space.
Speaker, that council bragged it was pioneering an easy council model.
Steve, what are you doing on your second account? I see that.
It then proceeded to outsource 96% of its council staff, transferred them to new service providers, run like private companies, paying dividends. Now, that council has gone bust.
Right. Okay, so before you ask this question, Corbyn has real beef with privatisation, and it's going to come up in this multiple times. I don't understand what his beef is with it, but he has it, and I don't get it. I think because he's a bit of because he's a socialist, and I'll call him that loosely. Let's just agree that he says he's a socialist. I will agree that he is a socialist, even if his policies are absolute communism, and his chancellor is one too. But he doesn't like privatisation at all. He doesn't like it. I don't mind that my public transport is privatised, because when it was nationalised, it was god awful. Not to say it's any better, but at least with privatisation, at least with that, I've seen improvements. I've seen change, the good change, the kind where I actually get a first class seat that looks like a first class seat when I ride a train, and not something that looks like it's held together with duct tape. And the reason, I think, if I remember correctly, the reason we sold those off wasn't just to raise funds, it was to help clear debt, but also at the same time, I think also because it was a burden on the taxpayer. Services were unreliable when they were owned by the public. Unfortunately, we're not all like Japan. We can't just have an amazing train service that actually arrives on time, and when it's late, gives us an adequate and sufficient refund. Our system, annoyingly with the private companies now as well, I think someone owns the railways, and so the companies, when you get compensation, you don't get all the compensation. It goes to the companies that... It's really silly. But at the same time, I honestly would rather that than have them publicly owned, because then they just stagnate. Let's continue, because this is getting me way off track.
Does the Prime Minister really believe that the slash and burn model for local government is really a good one?
Slash and burn's a bit melodramatic, don't you think? Now, I did a little digging, some budgets, yes, have been reduced, but it seemed to me that they were reduced because they didn't need to be as big. And we're now in a position where we have, as I mentioned last week, I've mentioned multiple times, we have a budget surplus. So I think it's quite interesting that now we're getting into the position where our economy is strong enough to give us a surplus, where we can then start to put more money back into the councils. But I don't think that would sate him. I think he'd just want to keep spending, and I think that's reckless for a socialist to act like a capitalist teenager with a credit card for the first time. Or a junkie that steals all your shit and then sells it. Ha! Corbyn's a heroin addict, actually. No, that actually is right. Yes, Saki, make one, because the following word should have to be on there. Crisis. Everything is in crisis. It's going to come up in this. I know it is. It happens every bloody week. Corbyn will say something is in crisis. Honestly. But in any case, I think with our budget and everything else going the way it is, I think it'd be great when we got the debt, for example, the debt interest down a bit. Our budget surplus would be greater. Our budget would be greater. We'll be able to pour more money into things. It's interesting that people say conservatives don't like... Yes, indeed, James, you're quite right. I really think that people who... And I'm not a conservative. I'm really not. But at the same time, they've had to do some really difficult things that have hurt a lot of us. I am one of those people. And I think it's sad that no one seems to be willing to accept it. And if I remember correctly, okay, so based on his behaviour, I'm inclined to believe... Oh, and I've got a quote. Where is it? Here it is. From Harold Wilson, who's going to be whose term as Prime Minister fits within a time frame that'll come up right at the end. But one of his most famous quotes is, "A week is a long time in politics." Apparently, it's many, many lifetimes, to the point where everyone seems to forget what happened 8-9 years ago. The damage that was done. He also said, "He who rejects change is the architect of decay. The only human institution which rejects progress is the cemetery." Well, if only he could see politics now, he'd know he was wrong. Anyway, let us continue.
What can I say to the Right Honourable Gentleman? First of all, it would be helpful if he accurately reflected the independent statutory inspection which concluded last week, the report was clear that Northamptonshire's failure is not a case of underfunding.
I really wish in the Hansard that this had been linked, because I didn't know that. But I will, if I have the opportunity. I'll go and find it after the stream, and I will link it in the description for all of you, because that is quite the conclusion with their supposed £40 million cuts, to then overspend by 21 point whatever million because of an assumption, which is interesting because it brings up housing, and housing is always an issue, and it comes up a couple of times later in PMQs with other people. And Labour regularly talk about how they made sure homes were being built. And I think Corbyn will even say it at one point. Problem is, when Labour were in government in 13 years, they built fuck all. They actually built fuck all. Whereas the Conservatives are building. Obviously, they're not being offloaded as quickly, but they're building, which is better than what Labour did. That's not to say this Labour couldn't do better, but no, they can't do better. Let's continue.
So his claims, indeed, Northamptonshire's core spending power is set to rise by £14.5 million. So I say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, The attack that he is making, that this is all about the amount of money that government is providing, is not correct. What we are ensuring is that councils are able to provide good services up and down the country, and that's what we see with councils, Conservative councils up and down the country, costing people less than Labour.
I just want to say now that there's something, if Theresa May wants to be good at this, I'm not criticising her answer then, because actually it was quite cool, like calm, collected. As long as she doesn't try and like engage the jeers, she just ignores it. I think she has a better chance. Her voice is so weak that it cannot command the room. And that is a direct criticism of, unfortunately, she does not have, like for example, David Cameron, and whether you like him or not, the guy had a powerful voice. If Gordon Brown had a shred of charisma, he would have also been quite formidable, but he was a fool, which was hilarious. Especially when he said, "We're going to save the world." Oh, that was special. Whereas Theresa May, because of her weaker voice, she can't do it. So she needs to be able to stop and then answer. Wait, give it a moment, take her time. In any case, I'm interested to see that report. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to look at that later. But we are going to be moving on to more deflection in a moment. So enjoy this.
Jeremy Corbyn! The problem is that Northamptonshire has gone bust, and it's caused by the Conservative government and the Conservative council. And it's a model, Mr. Speaker.
Assumption. Apparently he hasn't read the report. Either that or he has and decided, actually it's because I don't see enough zeros on the cheque they receive. While you are unwilling to accept the answer, or... No, not while. It's possible you either are unwilling to accept the answer, or you have simply ignored the answer and decided to continue with the scaremongery. It's quite silly.
That is still being used by Barnet Borough Council, until very recently run by the Conservatives. They lost control of it this week, where Capita holds contracts with an estimated value of £500 million. What has Barnet done? Cut council staff every year and increase spending on consultants every year. Government cuts mean councils across England are facing a £5.8 billion funding gap by 2020. So with hindsight, does the Prime Minister really believe it was right to prioritise tax cuts for the super rich and big business?
Oh, Jeremy. Yeah, he had Diane do the math for him. Fuck me. He actually did. You can tell as well. And the super rich argument is so overused because Labour's policies would fleece the rich to the point where they are then poor again. Take, for example, any rich celebrity in this country, okay? Any of them. They will be poor. A lot of them retire in their mid-30s. Yeah, no. You're now going to be bin men. Which is an interesting subject we're going to get onto very soon, oddly enough. But in any case, I know a lot of the policies they want to enact are just... Oh, fucking hell, look at that. That is the face of a simp. And that is the face of a guy who sat on a cucumber. Okay, I'm going to carry on.
Well, Mr. Speaker, clearly...
Before Berko says this, I just want to say, Corbyn knew he was going to get that reaction. He knew that reaction was going to come his way. He knew it would lead to an intervention from the Speaker. So why do it? He's so desperate to appear magnanimous and self-righteous, but in doing so, he just makes it seem like a cheap point. It's not really a winning one either. You have to tax at a reasonable rate, or the rich leave. That sounds silly, but unless you intend to place a ban on them travelling and then empty their bank accounts, or simply just, like taking their homes, go into their bank accounts and empty them, You cannot tell them what to do. You cannot fleece them, which is what you want to do. Or you believe, I assume you believe in that 50p tax rate we had not so long ago. Do you remember that? Basically, it meant that anyone earning over, I think it was 150,000 a year, would then pay 50 pence for every pound they made. Is it me, or does that sound ridiculous? People make millions. I know that you want to, and I get it. People want to make. If people make millions, they should pay a fair share. But paying a fair share doesn't mean they pay half their income. They earn the right to earn that money. I'm a poor person, and I'm okay with there being rich people. Okay. Let's see. Corbyn's traded in Diane Abbott for a younger model. Yes, but Diane Abbott is the frumpy cow sat two to that woman's right, so 2 over on the left. Confiscatory cucumber humpy. Yes, Prospero. Right, let's continue. The speaker. Oh, and the speaker recently was involved in a bullying scandal. Quotes scandal. People accusing him of bullying. Well, he was very quiet last week because of it. This week, not so much. So we're going to let him have his moment in the sun.
The House is becoming rather overexcited. I said a moment ago the Prime Minister's answer must be heard. The question from the Right Honourable Gentleman, the Leader of the Opposition, must also be heard, and it will be, however long it takes. Mr. Snell, you're behaving in a most undignified manner. Compose yourself, man. Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, there seemed to be a lot of concern amongst Conservative members about my suggestion that the government had prioritised tax cuts for the super rich and big business and put it as something more important than funding for social care, libraries, repairing...
False equivalence. It actually is. He's comparing priority and policy. He can't do that. He's making an assertion based on a false equivalence. So we're going to carry on.
Tolls, bin collection, or street...
Oh, bin collection. This one's going to get good. Interesting story. A member of my family is a bin man. And that member of my family, I was talking to them today, in fact, and they were telling me of issues with collection because this particular member of my family, they drive the dust cart. And it was quite interesting because they were explaining that even though the snow hasn't been that much in this area of the country, it's enough of a reason to slow down. Because if you can't, and this guy, he couldn't slow his dust cart down enough. So it got to the point where he couldn't do his job. They couldn't do their job. Because even with, you can say now, oh, why don't they grit the roads? Well, grit only works to a certain temperature. And unfortunately, some of these temperatures got a bit low to the point where the grit was ineffective. And the dust cart was sliding. So this is going to come up in a minute, and it gives me an excuse to talk about that a bit further. So let him ask his precious question, and Theresa may answer in her usual belligerent way. Oh shit! Right, go back. There we go. Right.
Core spending power is set to
0.8 billion. And it's caused by the Conservative government and the Conservative Council. And it's a model...
Annoyingly, then, I just accidentally went the wrong way, so I'm going to try and find it again.
Mr. Speaker, that is still being used by Barnet Borough Council. 0.8 billion funding gap by 2020. So with hindsight...
the bins.
Right.
Mr. Snell, you're...
Right.
More important...
Thank fuck for that. I honestly thought for a sec I'd skip the question.
Than funding for social care, libraries, repairing potholes, bin collection or street cleaning.
Can I say to the Right Honourable
To Neil, yes, I am congested. I apologise. I could put the microphone further back, actually. That might help. Excuse me. I do apologise for the heavy breathing, which makes me sound like I'm morbidly obese. I've heard this on multiple occasions. I really should stop. And yes, Corbyn needs social care. To be fair, he is edging 70, so it won't be long.
Gentlemen, he talks about bin collection. Well, people living in Birmingham under a Labour-run council saw thousands of tonnes of waste on the streets because the council was failing to collect the bins.
Right, let's talk about Birmingham. The Brummie area, fucking depressing. Yeah, that's actually a Brummy accent. So there are a number of articles I found relating to this, and the first was that Birmingham's Liberal Democrats are calling for the city's under-fire bin service to be privatised, claiming the in-house service has failed too often. This is in reference to, I believe, let's see, modernised service, budget, right. There's a quote here, and this is amusing. The aim is that the city is no longer held hostage by either over-powerful private companies or by powerful trade unions. That explains a lot. Trade unions shouldn't have as much power as they do in certain industries, and I think with council workers it's a bit of an issue. Concrete sciences too. Thank you. Right, yes. Last summer there was a bin strike. Yeah, not even a joke. There was actually a bin strike. Okay, which left rubbish on the streets for weeks, and the city's leadership at 6s and 7s over what to do. They didn't have a clue what to do. There is a reference to a £45 million plan to clean up the streets, but honestly, it all comes down to the fact that the waste services have overspent by £12 million a year for 2 years in a row. And obviously Corbyn doesn't want to mention this, but privatisation, because this is caused by the unions in this instance, privatisation would help. Also the whole, getting people to actually recycle would help. I don't know if Birmingham have any wheelie bins, but if they do, perhaps they should start using it. And yeah, thank you, Neil. I'm not ill though, thankfully. It's just congestion. Minor, mild, it'll go. So I'll read a little article there. Where is it? Oh yeah, the bin strike. So Birmingham embarked on a major overhaul of bin services in a bid to save money and increase efficiency. Members of the union voted overwhelmingly to take strike action on June 30th, 2017 over the downgrading of 113 jobs and potential loss of pay. So this disrupted bins for quite a number of weeks. To compound that, when we had our, quotes, beast from the east and the, quotes, pest from the west, with all that delightful snow it brought, that would have also caused issues. I know for a fact from the family member I mentioned, they've only now, with no snow now, finally caught up on all the extra rubbish that they were unable to collect before. Oh, Miss Steam needs a hug. Everyone give her a hug, I guess. So yeah, Birmingham, never has the term Birmingham is a shithole been more appropriate than it is now. Okay. Let's continue.
And we all know he talks about payments. We
Sorry.
all know he talks about tax. The top 1% of taxpayers are paying the highest burden of tax than they ever paid under Labour.
This is quite a regularly touted comment. It is actually true, but I get the feeling that Corbyn wants that burden to be even greater. And I say a burden. Obviously, with these super rich, it isn't a burden, but at the same time, I don't think he respects people's personal property. He doesn't respect people's personal income. He doesn't respect any of that. He believes the state should own everything. And I really believe that because he hates privatisation. And some of the policies we're going to get onto later just stink.
And we all know what Labour would mean for council taxpayers because just this week the Shadow Communities Secretary backed... he says,
Oh, that's the most mature response I've ever heard her say ever. I might meme it. I might use it in future response videos. If I ever do any anymore, because I haven't done one in a while. I probably should. It'd be fun. And for those who are curious, it's not the two black women that she's talking to, it's the white guy. And another interesting thing, on his right, our left, is Diane Abbott, the feckless idiot who can't. Feckless idiot. Just the feckless moron that thinks because she's innumerate, it's racist to call her that. I have no idea what Miss Steam just wrote. Wealth will vote with their feet. Exactly, Prospero. Exactly. Which is why there has to be a balance, and you've got to respect it. Much like I respect Whammon, government has to respect that the rich exist, which Corbyn doesn't want to do.
Could that be because he doesn't want people to know what he's supporting? Because he has supported a plan to stop local taxpayers having the right to stop tax hikes.
Which is actually 100% factually true. I'd have to find the article. I have a number of them. No, not that one. Oh crap! I closed it. Oh bollocks. Okay, I closed 2 of them. Okay. There are 2 other things he votes on. One is putting pressure on landowners to sell for a fraction of what they're worth. Not even a joke. There is a plan to treble the amount of tax some homeowners pay as a land value tax. Obviously, I mentioned the tourist tax. And there's also a thing about, and based on their Labour's manifesto, it showed that 4 million couples would face paying higher income tax through Jeremy Corbyn's plan to scrap the marriage allowance. I don't know why you need an allowance to be married, but I guess sometimes love isn't enough, or several kids. Sometimes you just need the Queen's face on a note that will slip out of your pocket, like it did to me last week, which, by the way, that was the most embarrassing thing to happen to me. To lose money just is so embarrassing. So yeah, there was hotel tax. Oh yeah, another one. Here we are. Yes, the land value tax. Council tax bills will treble for middle-class homeowners under Labour plans to introduce a so-called garden tax on the value of land. And this was also on the manifesto. All of it was actually, but it was a case of you'd have to be actively looking for things that were bad, which it was hard to see through all the bump. So let's close these tabs. Here we go. Right. Oh no, that's not it either. Right. Why do I have Daily Mail open? Fuck off. MP calls for. Oh no, this is all later on. Okay, so we can carry on. Sweet. He did actually say this, by the way. This the tax thing. I did have an article link for it. It's probably in the description, but not this description. Why did I scroll? Bell end. It's quite possibly in the description of this stream. Yes. So let's continue.
Supporting a plan to introduce a.
Whoa, Saki, you found a note. It might be mine. So can you give it back? That'd be great. I want to get some Costa coffee tomorrow morning.
Land value tax, a tax on your home and your garden.
Which I earlier mentioned, of course. And it is true. It's not just him, though. It was in the Labour manifesto.
And he wants to introduce a new hotel tax. We all know what would happen under...
That's the tourist tax thing, by the way. Yeah. Not even a joke. And that was a reference to Labour urging Scotland to do it. If you're interested in seeing some of the crap that guy says, go to his Twitter.
Labour, more taxes and ordinary working people would pay the price.
Which, to Jeremy Corbyn, includes middle-class people. Ordinary, I would say, are those below that. But Jeremy raises the bar. Ordinary to him would include the middle classes to the point where they would end up being dragged back to where they wouldn't want to be. Because, let's face it, we all have aspirations in life. I, for example, I want to own my own home. Of course I do. But under Jeremy Corbyn's plans, or if he was ever Prime Minister, I'd never be able to. Then again, my plans involve leaving this country. I would love to own a decent-sized home, which you won't get in this country. At a reasonable price, definitely not. You will in the States. I also want a gun, but for other reasons mostly. I just want to kill everyone. Wait, am I allowed to say that live? Am I allowed to say that live?
Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Secretary for Local Government supports councils, thinks they should be properly funded, and doesn't think they should be a vehicle for privatisation.
Okay, firstly, that wasn't scripted, notice, because Corbyn didn't look at his notes when he said that. Second, you don't need to white knight for that faggot on the left there. He can defend himself. And thirdly, privatisation isn't always bad. Okay, you need to get this into your head. I mean, you on multiple occasions have talked about how it's embarrassing to go to food banks, right? It is embarrassing. I've done it myself. I think 3 times in my adult life I've gone to a food bank. It is humiliating when you've worked so hard to then have to rely on the generosity of the community. But, under your plans, people would basically exist in food banks because you'd nationalise everything to the point where we would have nothing. No, you will be taken to jail very soon for threats. If violence, you mean of violence, yes? Right. Oh, Orange Jones is going to Portsmouth. I love Portsmouth. I went there when I was a young boy. I saw some beautiful ships. HMS Victory being the highlight. I think one was called HMS... Is it HMS Warhammer? HMS Hammer? I think I went on both, and I noticed even as a kid, HMS Victory's lower decks are honestly only for hobbits or the vertically challenged, because even then I could bang my head into the ceiling quite easily. Warrior, thank you. Warrior, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of Surrey County Council, who happens to be a Conservative, said we're facing the most difficult financial crisis
Even though it wasn't him that said it. Come on.
In our history, and he didn't mince his words. He went on to say the government cannot stand idly by while Rome burns.
I couldn't find the quote, so I couldn't give it to you. Sorry.
Council funding has been cut by half since 2010.
That's not true.
Households in England, Mr. Speaker, now face council tax rises of £1 billion.
Okay, that's misleading. That's across many boroughs. That's not like, okay, so Surrey County Council, now you need to generate an extra £1 billion.
The Tory leader of the Local Government Association says councils will have to continue to cut back services or stop some altogether due to government cuts. So as people open their council tax bills, isn't it clear what the Conservative message is? Pay more.
Okay, I'll let him finish.
To get less.
He really doesn't have doesn't possess any elegance with his wording. I could have said that, made it sound a lot better, but the stutter in the middle, no. And to address Sir Blue-Footed Booby, I was born in Crawley, West Sussex, but I was raised in Surrey. And so yes, that is exactly where the posh totty lives, because I grew up surrounded by it. That said, none of my family have my voice, so oh well. Carry on. Yeah, exactly, Neil. Neil, don't want to dox or anything, but whereabouts in Surrey are you from? Because I grew up in a little village called Smallfield, but then lived in Reigate until I was about 19. Then we left. Your sexy, sexy voice, thank you. Let's carry on, because it is dangerous how he tries to pass $1 billion when you think about the population within a certain area isn't that much.
The average council tax for Band D property is £100 less under Conservative councils than it is under Labour.
Chatsy, nice. To address her comment with the beautiful pause face there, she's actually telling the truth. So I don't get his argument as much, which is quite irritating.
but he says that his shadow local government secretary is supporting councils. I wonder if he's supporting these councils, Haringey, where the Labour leader was forced out.
Yeah, he was. He did a pretty shitty job.
Brighton, where the Labour leader was forced out.
Guess what he did? Yeah, a shitty job.
Cornwall, where the Labour group leader was forced out.
Can you take a wild guess what they did? Because honestly, there's a trend here.
What had these people done? They had supported building more homes, providing good local services.
Basically, and I don't mean they did a shitty job, so what actually happened was they wanted to do things for the community and it wasn't in the Labour's best interest.
And tackling anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
Which is a growing problem. Labour's this party that preaches all the time that they are the party of tolerance, acceptance, diversity. But they're the most anti-Semitic party in this country. There is no denying it. Someone might now say, oh, but a BNP, they're not a party, really, are they? Oh, but UKIP, they're not really a party either, are they? Let's face it, there's the only anti-Semitism in this country now comes from Labour and their constant bullshit with Zionist rhetoric. In any case, they basically went against the narrative and called out this nonsense, and they lost their jobs because of it. They will undoubtedly, because this year we have council elections, and actually I get to do something rather interesting. Earlier this evening I received an email. I don't know why, but I did. Apparently a few years ago I signed up for email newsletters from the Labour Party, Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrats, and I got one this evening from Jeremy Corbyn. It says, Omegon, today I launched our local elections campaign. It's an ambitious campaign to elect hundreds of Labour councillors and take councils from the Tories. I don't know why you use the term Tories. You could just write the Conservative Party. It sounds a bit more professional than Tory. We can send an unmistakable message to this government. Enough is enough. That is in bold, by the way. But we can only be this ambitious because of supporters like you. Like, fuck. If you and thousands of others chip in, see the professionalism, we can build a massive people-powered campaign people-powered to defeat the Tories and turn councils across the country red. And then there's a bunch of options here for, yes, I'll chip in £5, yes, I'll chip in £10, yes, I'll chip in £20, and yes, I'll chip in another amount. I might do, what's the pay gap again? Is it 73 cents? So I'll do 73p. Underneath, there's a bit more because I want to read all of this. It has never been more vital that people across the country elect Labour councils to protect and support local communities. I should probably pull OBS up so I can at least see the chat. Tories is quicker, yeah. Really, Carlos? Amazing. After 8 years of Conservative cuts, failed privatisations and falling living standards, it's time for real change, which is sensationalism, scaremongery and utter bollocks. Okay? Conservatives had to make the cuts. You ignored the fact that they had to happen. Okay? Failed privatisations, citation needed. If you're now going to start arguing for companies like what's that London one that collapsed recently? I've noticed they've been in the inquiries committees recently, but it begins with C, doesn't it? And I can't remember the name. Doesn't matter. And the final part. Labour will give dignity and support to those in need, rebuild our communities and transform our country for the many, not the few. Circa Commie 86. Your support will make this happen. Well, I'm assigning you a special slot. It's called spam. I'll quickly have a look. Collapsed companies, because it companies and scandals. It begins with C, and I just can't remember. Carillion. There it is. Got it. Yes, Carillion. But that's not a fair argument because they're not government owned. We have contracts with them, but that's it. Anyway, let's continue because we're nearly, well, getting there, I guess.
So the message is clear. If you believe in good local services, if you want to see more homes built, and if you want to tackle anti-Semitism, there is no place for you in the Labour Party.
Which, let's face it, as some have mentioned in the chat, is absolutely true. It is so embarrassing. And hello, Skog. I'm surprised you're here and not playing on Moistonia. I'm the fucking few bitch. If you can't support me, I'll vote another way. That's the thing, though, isn't it? They're supposed to, and people keep saying this, they're supposed to represent the core worker. But they don't. They didn't with Tony Blair either. Tony Blair's slogan ran off the back of a song called Things Can Only Get Better in the most cringy advert to ever exist ever, which I'm not going to put you through. It is pure, unadulterated, skin-crawling cringe. It is bad. Anyway, let's see how he recovers from this, because honestly, Labour don't ever address this. It's interesting for a party that's so identitarian they don't deal with that little elephant in the room. By the way, did you notice what's her name, Diane Abbott there? Yeah, bitch needs to go on a diet. So do a number of them as well, actually, but hers is quite noticeable. And yes, I'm fat shaming.
Mr. Speaker!
Can I hear footsteps? Are they stomping?
Labour councils build houses.
That's a lie. That's actually... Okay, she'll touch on this, I know she will. But Labour was in power, unadulterated power, for like 13 years. Okay, when it waned, even then people were like, wait, they actually didn't do shit, they were corporate America at best. Oh, we'll say we'll do stuff, but we'll do nothing. Labour councils have the money to do things. In fact, it's a question that came up before Corbyn. I think it comes up after Corbyn as well. And I will get to that question because it will reference housing, where a Labour person in power isn't doing his job.
Conservative councils privatise.
Okay, privatisation's bad. Okay, just like own your own shit. I'm not doing that anymore. Let's carry on.
And Mr.
Order!
To address James in the chat, I would love to see this in America. Yesterday when I talked to Roaming Millennial about this, I asked her if her parliament was similar, because I know they operate under a similar system, but I was curious to see whether or not it played out like this. And I get the feeling, and I might do it, I might respond to a Canadian Prime Minister's questions for the lols. I might get Roaming Millennial to join me, because I think it'd be funny to watch her cringe. Yeah.
Order! Order! There's a very raucous atmosphere. I've said it before, I say it again. Backbench members should seek to imitate the zen-like calm of the father of the house, who's an example to us all. Jeremy Corbyn!
That's got to be embarrassing for him. The Father of the House, by the way, is a title bestowed upon the longest-serving member of Parliament in the House currently. And it could be, obviously, not just the Father of the House, it could be the Mother of the House as well. Father of the House this time is Kenneth Clarke of Rushcliffe. Responding to Trudeau may cause cancer. Yes, ass cancer. So let's continue.
We all admire Zen, Mr. Speaker. Pay more for less is what the Conservative message is.
This term has been coined recently by Labour.
Leicestershire, the county council is pushing through £50 million worth of cuts and council tax increases of 6%. Their deputy leader blamed chronically low government funding. That's the Tory message. Pay more to get less. But it's not just households, Mr. Speaker. The average small shop will see their rates bill increase by £3,600. Empty shops suck the whole life out of our high streets and local communities.
Omegon's world of PMQ. Oh dear God. I would cut myself.
So why is the Prime Minister presiding over a government that is tearing the heart out of our local high streets?
Oh. Okay. I don't know if he's on his 6th question yet, but I really hope he is soon, because this is starting to get tedious. The scaremongery is quite scripted. You can tell it's scripted. Along with that 5-word slogan that I've already forgotten. It's so memorable, I've forgotten it. Although I do recall he delivered it the second time quite poorly. Oh yeah. Is it 5 words or 4 words? It doesn't matter. Pay more, receive less. I guess it's 4. In any case, the scaremongery is not really accurate or helpful. For example, and I can personal experience, my town is a Conservative constituency. Sorry, Deal Dover. That's the of Charlie Elphick, who I've seen ask multiple questions in Parliament. He's quite a passionate guy. He actually is a genuinely good man. I've still got the letter in my desk here that he sent to me just after the after a car crash, just helping my family out, which was really nice of him, actually. I think I still have it. Yeah, I have the letter here. It's you know, I didn't know paper actually came in this kind of way. It's quite fancy. Where he actually made sure my sister would keep her home. He's a very proactive MP, and I give him credit for that. And we had issues a few years back. I remember after the economic crash, because I wasn't living here at the time. I was at university. But a lot of shops did go. Woolworths was one of the biggest shops in our area. And Woolworths, when it went, it left a big gap in the town. It was actually replaced not long after by a Poundland, which I actually have got to go into tomorrow, because I need to get some coloured card, so I can put it in some picture frames. I need to use it for something. But Poundland is a fantastic replacement, and also the towns, sorry, because it's not a city, they're having money put into them for regeneration projects, which, upon seeing them, actually impress me, because this will fix a lot of the neglect that these towns have had for so long. And I'm not trying to blame this on Labour, but it's a damning statement that it took this long to get the work done, or be able to get the money together to be able to get the work done. So you can say pay more for less, but for the longest time we had to pay and get nothing because of what happened. And you could try and ignore it as much as you want, under the guise of believing whatever that politician was I mentioned earlier, with the whole a week in politics is a long time. Wilson? I think it was Wilson. But it doesn't change the fact that you guys fucked up, and we've had to suffer for it.
First of all, we've provided extra support for small businesses in relation to business rates. Secondly, he talks about Labour councils building homes. Well, actually, we've seen more council homes being built under this government than under 13 years of a Labour government.
If I remember correctly, I think in 1 year the Conservatives managed to build more than Labour did in 13 years. And I think this comes down to the whole... there was a term that was used, a slogan, I think. For every home sold, we will build a new one. The problem was, Labour weren't building a new one for every one sold. You want people to own their homes, but you weren't replacing them. Yeah.
And he talks about what councillors are saying at local level. Well, I'm pleased to say that yesterday, 2 Labour councillors from Ashfield District Council joined the Conservatives.
you're going to love the reason why. And I think, by the way, this will probably be, if it's the last question, I think we're not going to get to the SNP, which is a shame, but I will talk briefly when I get to it about what they say, along with the other mentions that are quite interesting.
And what did one of them say? They said, both locally and nationally, the Labour Party has been taken over by the hard left, who are more interested in fighting internal ideological battles than standing up for the priorities of working men and women.
That is such a burn. Honestly, I love it. It's like they've basically just gone burn. It's beautiful.
Conservatives will always welcome people who care about their local area, and we will always stand up for people in their local area.
Okay, so if I think carefully, this is Corbyn's last question. So I'm briefly going to touch on the SNP. He asked one misleading question about voting and how you should respect the vote. Simple enough. And we will do Corbyn's last question. The second question was a reference to the capita crap with Facebook and Conservatives' involvement, or whether they have any contact with the parent company and the subsidiary company, and any donations received from members who are connected to those who own shares in them. It's quite frankly a load of bollocks. It's about corruption and respecting the vote. That's it. So yeah, let's get Corbyn's last question in.
Mr. Speaker, 500,000 businesses will see their rates rise this year, some by 500%. Even Mary Portas, who led the government's Save the High Street campaign, said it was simply a PR campaign which looked like, hey, we're doing something, and hoped it might kickstart something. But it didn't. Mr. Speaker, this Conservative government has slashed public services. They cut funding and expect councils to pick up the pieces. The result of this is children's centres are closing, schools are struggling, fewer police on the streets, older people being left without care or dignity, and refugees...
Dignity is not quantifiable, just going to say. And how councils choose to spend their money is down to the councils. It sounds really silly, but it's down to the councils to do what they do with their budget. If they decide to take away certain services, then they take away those services. Yes, they've had less money for a while, but they've had it because of a reason. It seems like I have to keep restating that, but you can't just spend your way out of this. Oh shit. Bollocks. Well, I fucked that up. Let's find it.
Unemployment hasn't been...
councils to pick up the pieces.
Right, oh, fam.
The result of this
Couldn't have planned that any better.
is children's centres are closing, schools are struggling, fewer police on the streets, older people being left without care or dignity, and refugees turning women away. The Tories' own head...
Okay, so we're going to talk about that one quickly. Refugees turning women away. Is it because some of them are mandated to take in men? No. Is it because they are not all government funded? Yes, because they're not supposed to be. A lot of them are charities. They have limited spaces of their own. But you seem to just think that women are the only people who need help. I live in a pokey seaside town. Honestly, I have seen at least a dozen homeless people here now. There's nowhere for them to go. And it's men because even if homeless, they are still considered a low priority, dickhead. Stop making everything about identity and focus on the entire idea itself. God's idiot. Never has his virtue shined so bright that I could see it through his glasses, even if it was shining out of his arse first.
Head of local government says it's unsustainable. And doesn't it tell you everything?
Do you know what else is unsustainable? Basing an economy on endless growth. It seems pretty obvious, but apparently you seem to think economies must grow all the time. Then again, you're a socialist, so why the fuck do you keep mentioning economies? You don't like them, you don't respect them. You don't respect them like I do the Whammons.
Thing you need to know. Doesn't it tell you everything you need to know about this government, that it demands households and businesses pay more to get less.
Pay more to get less. Right, that's the 5-word slogan that has come up so many fucking times. Stop it. Stop it. Whoever coined it, fire them. Okay? If it was the dickhead sat to your left, so on our right, wearing the socks that do not match his tie or suit, fire him. Honestly. And maybe buy him some food, because he looks like he's lost weight, and it doesn't look like he lost it healthily. Probably still, because he might still be on a hunger strike for that Gitmo shit. Alright, let's listen to Theresa May's response.
This government is spending more on our schools and our NHS than ever before. We're able to do that because of the balanced approach we take to our economy and because of the strong economy we see under the Conservatives. But I notice that the Right Honourable Gentleman in his 6 questions has not mentioned today's unemployment figures.
Which are actually quite good. I don't want to... I don't think it should be celebrated too much, but I do think that it is a good sign.
Employment is at a joint record high. Unemployment hasn't been lower since 1975. Economic inaction...
During the time of the earlier mentioned Prime Minister Wilson, that I mentioned earlier on in the stream with that quote about a week in politics.
Activity is at a record low. That's a strong jobs market. Who do I think benefits from a strong jobs market? Labour staffers, Labour council leaders and moderate Labour members of Parliament.
None of whom are on the front bench. You're welcome. There are a couple other things that do come up in this. And I'm going to let the cheeky little guy who asks his next question, because actually I think this is quite interesting. But before I do that, I want to address 2 later questions that we're not going to get to. One is a reference to the fact that people in some boroughs in London are being sent away to other boroughs outside of London to other homes. And this is an issue because they're not the Mayor of London is being given money to build properties, but he isn't. That's not a lie, and it's not me insulting him. That is a statement of fact. He's been given money to build properties, he's not using it to build properties. So people who need homes are being sent out of London, which is unfortunate for them. I do, though, recall when the bedroom tax was introduced. A lot of people were sent to Birmingham, Luton, Bolton, a few other places. I think one got sent to Ramsgate, near me. It was also because you cannot be expected to receive welfare payments or welfare checks, and be able to afford to live in London. London is unreasonably expensive. The second one was a reference to a recent statement that's come out about the CFP. For those that don't know, the CFP is the Common Fisheries Policy. Now this is a set of rules for managing European fishing fleets and for conserving fishing stocks, which is a load of bollocks, because a lot of the nations in the EU don't have much ocean to begin with. So a lot of them fish in our water to make up for that. Our fishing stocks suffer for it, so that others can then get more. And also it restricts how much we are allowed to catch of each type of fish, which apparently encourages the fishing industry by various market interventions. To me, it's a load of bollocks. Now, the reason this gets brought up is one of the Scottish members of Scottish nationalist politicians, SNP MPs. They bring this up and mention it's a bit of a con that we're leaving the single market, we're leaving the EU even, but we're still staying a part of this common fisheries policy until the transition period is concluded. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg did a fantastic dissection of this with Emily Maidlis on BBC. It might have been Newsnight or, I don't know, Daily Politics or something stupid. But he went through this and he said he doesn't agree with this at all. It's absolute nonsense. And I agree with him. And he went through further and more detail because he obviously knew what he was talking about. And he certainly discussed this at great depth, and she tried to catch him out and failed miserably. He's totally unflappable. I quite enjoyed that. But in any case, the funnier bit about this isn't about the fact that it's a CFP. It's the fact that he wants us to leave the CFP, but he's a member of a party that wants to stay in the EU. Right? There's something funny there. So before we finish, I'm gonna pull up that last question. Now it's completely off topic, and it's not really that politically. It's not that. It's just that I quite enjoy this because it's a Conservative member of Parliament who doesn't sound like a Conservative. He sounds like a chav.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I can only assume that the Leader of the Opposition hasn't read the report about Northamptonshire County Council. I'd commend it to him. But worldwide, I want to focus on a different issue today.
Looks like a fucking mouse.
Worldwide, every minute, millions of throwaway paper coffee cups go to landfill. In order to solve it, we need industry, consumers, and government to work together. And in that spirit, Amaray, a company in my constituency, have developed a fully recyclable alternative cup that can be easily recycled, unlike the current option.
Which I didn't know. See, on Wednesday, was it Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday, I went into Costa Coffee. I thought, you know what? I'll get a cheeky hot chocolate. I went in and I got a free, small though, white hot chocolate. And I asked why this because they said because their till was broken. I was like, fucking score! I got to the pub and I went to put it in the recycling and I was told I couldn't because they couldn't recycle it. And I didn't know this. I then told the people at the pub that I was at that they could all get a free small drink, and they were like, fucking off, they're gone. But it is quite intriguing, and there are a couple of articles I do want to touch on for this, because, you know, why not end on something a bit more light-hearted?
So will my right honourable friend join me in welcoming that innovation, and perhaps if she's around afterwards, I might be able to give one to her.
Wait. This was a wasted question. I don't know if this one was, because actually I think this is quite interesting about innovation, and it's just another planted question. I'm heading to Pornhub. Have fun, James. Stand up straight and speak from the belly, you weasel in a suit. Yes. There was actually an article on the BBC about him, because they thought the way he asked the question was sexually suggestive, which is why a lot of politicians laugh. I'm not actually going to finish with this because I'm done with that. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to read a couple of things I had on this. So the BBC had this thing about the 4 solutions about this, because we throw 2.5 billion coffee cups every year in waste. There's supposedly only a small amount is actually dealt with sustainably, so it's not actually that recyclable. And there's some committee bollocks about it. So the 4 solutions that were given, one's called a frugal pack, which is just changing the cup to something else. And the reason, and for those who don't know this, the reason that only some can be recycled is because of the laminate inside that make them waterproof. There's a company in Ipswich that manufacture cars that can be recycled in a regular way. I assume it makes it so that the laminate is a bit more, breaks down a lot easier under far simpler conditions. There's also Cup Club, which is another piece of crap. It's just take your own cup, why not? I mean, come on. There's an origami cup which you can take, and then there's an edible cup, which basically looks like that thing you put your ice cream in, the biscuit thing. Yeah. There was also talk about a 25p charge on takeaway coffee cups ahead of a possible ban. Now, I think if the companies aren't changing to something more biodegradable, then actually that's a pretty reasonable thing to do, because you want to encourage people to be more eco-friendly, and we've certainly started doing that by making people pay for plastic bags. When I go shopping, I take one of those tote bags. It's not difficult. The bag is right next to me. Or a rucksack. It's just a case of, making sure I don't have to then pay additional money for bags I don't want or need. Anyway, I think I'm done here. because honestly, this Prime Minister's question wasn't as toxic as I expected. It wasn't focused on topics I would rather they covered. Like, for example, I still wish they'd talk about Telford. I have a strange feeling Lucy Allen is being ignored in Parliament because I saw her stand up a couple of times, I think. So I'm inclined to believe they're not going to let her talk about it, and I hope that she does. Fingers crossed, if nothing goes too bad, that I should be able to. Okay, Prospero, you actually mentioned something good. There is a discount. Costa Coffee do it if you bring in a travel mug. You do get a discount. I know this because I normally do bring in one when I go there. I bring in one that's just a massive Batman one because I don't have the money for a Cthulhu one yet. Unless something pops up about this common fisheries policy. Sent to Coventry. Of course she has. I will, of course, talk about that if more comes out about it tomorrow, possibly. If not, I hope you will have a lovely evening. And I'll speak to you, I guess, next week on this. If PMQs is on, of course. If not, or maybe I will do the PMQ in Canada. That could be fun.